Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. With host and founder Richard Case and co-host and retreat leader Kathy Ricconi. Jesus reminds us to watch for the signs of his return. Today we will explore further what we are seeing in our times that line up with what signs he said would indicate the potential of the end and his return. We will also discuss the practical meaning of this as we watch and as a remnant prepare as he so leads. And now your host, Richard Case.
Well, good morning, Kathy. Here we are, Good Times Friday. We've tried, we had a little technical issue there. We've tried it again. So we're talking about the end times, and been processing lots and lots of interesting things that are happening in the world as we understand it. We talked about Russia and linking up with China, replacing Saudi Arabia as the primary supplier of oil and gas to China. So that's in there, paying in not petrodollars, but paying in rubles and yuan, and they're bypassing what they call the petrodollar system, which included the United States, by the way.
Wasn't there also, I don't know that we talked about this, but recently Russia defaulted for the first time.
Well, I was going to say that that they defaulted.
That's been an interesting occurrence,
They defaulted
right?
on debt that they owed, and they didn't pay the interest and they didn't pay the principal that they have to pay, so they technically defaulted. And I'm trying to follow, what happened. Likely they wind up settling it, but I think they let the world know that because of what you're doing to us, we can default back to you. And right. I think they're trying to get there.
I think it was a little bit of a trying to flex into message more than it was an actual.
Yep. And the Russia is trying to become, in a sense, not as dependent on even Europe for stuff, and do it more with Asia, China.
Right. And that partnership with China helps them to do that.
And they have Middle East stuff going on too with Iran, Iraq, Turkey, Persia, Syria. Etc. So lots of stuff going on, and that's a big news that they defaulted. I mean, because normally one of the major countries in the world doesn't default on their debt,
right? And
one of the pieces of information underneath that all is that Russia, in a sense, probably might have one of the best understandings of world economics of anybody, and what they're doing by switching over to ruble and yuan, and also what they're requiring is for Europe and for United States, we still buy things from them,
right? And they want payment in rubles, correct?
Well, what they've done, this just happened this last week, is they want payment in gold.
Oh, interesting.
And that,
okay, I had not heard this.
Yeah,
one.
So no, we want you to pay us in gold because they see that the debt rate and the debt situation around the world is that if you pay me in currency, it's
that could change value very quickly.
It's going to be devalued, but gold is not, and so they're what's called commoditizing the system and changing it from a currency based to a metal based, which will have a big impact on the world, and it could cause us, because of our debt load, we could actually wind up defaulting, where if Russia, China, Middle East called any of their debt, we wouldn't be able to pay it because we don't have it. Because think about, if you were a person right now in the United States with a person, the only way they can function is by credit card, because the income they have isn't enough to pay for their expenses, and they don't have a reserve to pay things because they borrow all the time to do it. So they're basically living on credit card, And as you and I know, that ultimately
that doesn't work.
When that happens and the income reduces, I run out of gas to be able to pay. I mean, literally run out of capability to be able to pay it. And that's possible with us. And Russia is kind of observing that. It's like, I don't want to have my stuff devalued by your payments, so I'm going to make you pay in gold.
I'm curious. I know there has been a shift over the years. Forever ago, everything was very gold backed as far as currency goes. They shifted away from that for quite a while now, or at least a percentage has been shifted away. Are there any economies in our world today that are still 100% gold backed?
No.
Do you know?
No.
Okay.
We went off the gold standard, interesting enough, in the 70s under Nixon. And the world went to the currency based.
Right.
Now, what China, Russia are doing is they're trying to reestablish the gold standard for them. And that's why they're buying massive amounts of gold to be able to hold up their currency relative to the gold standard. And we're not on it anymore, and most countries around the world aren't on it. Even Russia and China are not purely on it. But what they're doing is they're amassing an amazing amount of gold to be able to support their economy.
Will that ultimately make their currency stronger than ours?
Yes, absolutely.
If it is gold backed?
Yeah, if it's backed up by hard things like metals. Remember, gold and platinum and silver are limited commodities. That's why they're so amazing. So when generally speaking, when the stock market declines and you can't make as much money in stocks, bonds, interest rates, from savings accounts, etc., it converts into metals, and the price of metals goes up. Now, this interesting thing happened, and is happening.
We've seen gold skyrocket in the last 2 years.
Typically, ever since 2008, with the economy doing what it did, which is it grew and became significant. We had a hiccup in 15, 16, but it wasn't much. And typically gold would have declined significantly, while the stock market's tripled since then.
Exactly.
So gold and silver generally go the other direction. Well, they kept going up too. Now there's two reasons for that. One is the Fed kept the interest rates artificially low.
Right.
So that people in the know understood, well, that's going to create inflation at some point. And I better get ready for that. So I need to get.
They started buying more gold and silver.
I need to buy gold and silver. That's relatively cheap in their mind. Two is that gold and silver is based on supply and demand. So Russia, Iran, China, certain countries have been buying massive amounts of gold over the last 4 to 5 years.
And that's part of why the price has skyrocketed so much?
That's why it skyrocketed. And just lately, it's come down quite a bit. So it hit a high. It's probably gone down 25, 30% just in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Really?
Yeah, because of the changeover of, well, we bought a lot of this gold. We're going to wait for it to go back to a place of more affordability, and then we'll see it buy again, because there's going to be, in the cycle of recession, there will be a lot of gold buying. So they kind of let it drift back to where it normally would be. It's not quite there yet. Price-wise, I believe we'll see a bunch of people buying it, because it's going to be relatively inexpensive to the rest of the opportunities. So
interesting. Okay.
And as you think about, when we're talking about the end and thinking about preparation, one of the, and this is just prudence, not even related to the end per se, but that one of the things for investments is to what's called a hedge.
Right.
And that is that, okay, if I'm in the stock market, generally it's doing pretty well. Well, I don't want to put a lot of money in gold and silver, because that's going to go down.
Right.
But while it's down, we need to what's called diversify.
Right.
and
So
hedge.
you want to buy more of it. So
And it's not like put all of your investment in gold and silver, but have a portion of it in gold and silver, so that when the whole thing recycles and the stock market tanks, gold and silver is going to go up, and it'll cover what you might have lost in the market because of the value of what you now owned as it's called a hedge. And that's just prudence. Well, I can tell you that the swings are going to become more pronounced, and my recommendation is to have something in metals of some kind over the next several years, because we're going to see big swings, and it's a hedge, and I don't think you'll be able to control it or predict it. So it could happen, like Israel collapses. We find out Israel collapses. Right. We didn't think about that. We didn't expect that. Or hey, COVID hits. We didn't expect that. It happened fast, and so that's why a hedge is you can't predict it enough that if something happens and when something happens, then it's beneficial to have something that could gain from that.
Right. Right. Really just to balance yourself essentially, that if all of this is tanked, then you've got something else that has come up at the same time.
Right. And then as we look at, recession, which is likely, I was just saying to you a little while ago that a national home builder in one day had 25,000 cancellations of their houses, because, again, fear, interest rates going up. I really can't afford that. I don't. They begin to see, wait a minute, I'm paying at the very, very top, and things are going to come back down price-wise. So it'd be better for me not to go through with that and wait. See what's going to happen to me with my job. See what's going to happen with my house. Maybe my house won't be as valuable as I thought. Lots and lots of things. But whenever there's what you would call economic fear, it drives you to kind of stop for a minute and say, maybe
put the brakes on a little bit.
Maybe I shouldn't do that yet. And interesting enough, that very thought, just that very activity itself, is self-fulfilling. Because they did it, like maybe I should not do that right now, and they don't. And then guess what? Everybody that relied on that also like, those 25,000 homes they aren't sold now. Maybe we should be careful about going after building a whole bunch of new ones. Maybe we should just try to get these sold. Well, then they stop hiring labor, and you can see how it goes.
Right. You definitely see the trickle down of it all.
Because economics is all based on expectation, and when you have the what we call the pundits saying it in my lifetime, and I can tell you that I followed it pretty carefully. Whenever I saw the experts saying the word recession, it was within 6 months that happened, and I can pretty safely predict. Yeah, we're going to have a recession, I think, in the next 6 months. Certainly, by the end of this year, maybe into the first quarter of next year, we're going to have a recession.
Right.
And the reason is it's just simple self-fulfilling prophecy. There's so many people saying it, they act a certain way, and interesting enough, they cause it. So
very interesting. Yeah.
It is interesting. So as we look at the fluctuation of this and the preparation, for the end, and there's just there's some other things that are happening. This is in the realm of one world government. Is that there is and because my wife is German, we have connection with Germany. Got a video, and it showed a German journalist arrested, and they want to put her in jail for 3 years. And the reason is that she was in Ukraine reporting, and she reported the truth. And now listen to this. The truth was, it was reported by the worldwide news that Russia came in and killed a bunch of civilians in a particular city. She was there. And she reported that isn't so. It was Ukrainians who killed other Ukrainians and called it Russia killing them.
Oh, wow.
And she has documentation. of observation, documentation, video, stuff specifically, and the German government arrests her and wants to put her in jail and says, and they took away, they canceled.
Are they doing it based on like misinformation, trying to say misinformation or something like that?
That's what they're trying to say.
They've got to give some kind of reason,
yeah,
right?
There's some kind of reason. And what they did is they confiscated her bank accounts. People tried to give her a GoFundMe to handle it. They stopped that and took that. And this is without due process. They haven't even gone to trial yet. They've just arrested her and they're trying to put her in jail for 3 years, and they've shut all this stuff off. And what I'm trying to say is that we would have never imagined that. Wait a minute. And she was interviewed about this, and she said, I thought I lived in a place where free speech was promoted and wanted, particularly for me to report the truth. And I've been shut down from reporting the truth, and it's happening, all over the place. And same thing is happening in different parts of the world, where a variety of things have been basically controlled and done differently, where there is a controlling aspect of it because they decided to do it and violate the system, so to speak.
Right. What's interesting is you say that. Don't you think, or maybe this is just me and my naivety, but growing up, I always felt like I learned that other countries, particularly Russia, particularly China, did such a job of controlling what came out through the media and controlling the news that they never had full and accurate news. But in America, we always had full and accurate news.
Yeah.
And that was really what I believed. And just what you're describing now even brings to light this idea that truly Christians need great discernment that can only come from God.
Right.
Because all systems have sinful people involved, and there is we are being given information that we want to be given from whatever sources, or not that we want to be given, but that they want to give us from whatever sources, is what I'm hearing you say.
Right.
Yeah,
I watched a documentary on World War II and Hitler, and the documentary was on how did he wind up in power. And what he did is he controlled the media.
Right. So much propaganda.
And he basically literally controlled it to the nth degree, to where it appeared certain things were said and done and being fulfilled, but underneath it all was complete opposite.
Right.
But nobody could ever put it out there because he literally controlled the whole thing, and he built a persona that people actually thought, isn't this good? Germany's gonna get back into power, and hey, hallelujah, fantastic. And so he built this,
and it seemed all justified based on what they were reading and hearing reported and everything else.
But he controlled the media, so that when we're talking about end times, we're going to get into a discussion of the beast. Is that remember, it's one world government, and that one world government is a controlling government. Because that's that by the nature of it. It's literally.
And so we truly have to really press in on discernment and learning to hear God's voice and asking the right questions as we go, right?
Right, and understand the timing of it and the sequence of it. And all we can say is that there's lots of evidence that the one world government is in process of being put together. And again, we can't predict whether it's going to be 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. The structure of it is happening right now, and God says, watch the signs and be observant of it. So it's a matter of, okay, I can see that. That's my perspective. Okay, I can see that. Father, what would you have me understand about that? What do you want me to learn about that? And he doesn't say, well, life's over, or that, give up. It's always about, I'm going to bless you to make you a blessing. I'm going to give you the covenant no matter what. But as things move in a certain direction, you have to be aware. You have to be, have wisdom about it and have an understanding, particularly as we're going to get into. If we are headed to the end of the tribulation, the Bible's very clear what happens. And remember, it's a spiritual thing, and there's spiritual dynamic to it. there's things that we're called to participate in and things we're called not to. And so that's what we got to spend some time talking about. But what we're seeing is that almost every week now, every day, is another interesting, I've never seen that. I've never seen that before. Russia default on her debt. That's been a century ago. Really? Wow. That's significant. Or Israel collapsing again. Or Russia and China are getting ready to support their currencies with gold. And it's just like, we start to see that.
Right.
So as we look at that, we want to get into this discussion, and this will be a couple of sessions, but we want to get into the beast. And the question as we go into the end times, and tribulation particularly, is there's different players. And there's a harlot, and the harlot would be a cabal that is actually working ahead of the tribulation to put things in place so that the beast, and the beast is a system, can operate. And think of the beast as a one world government, and all the structure associated with that. So it's a beast. So, like, for example, when we had COVID, New York City had severe restrictions about what you could or couldn't do, including, and just anybody that follows sports, even after it started to diminish, they said, if you're going to come and play sports in our town, you have to be vaccinated.
Right.
Well, there's players.
Even to come play.
Play.
Not even just to watch, but to play.
To come play. Particularly, and by the way, you couldn't go to a public place without being vaccinated.
Right.
But you couldn't even come play. And so, and the funny thing is that, the players are saying, well, I'm in 2 states away. I play with these same guys every day. And you're telling me I can't play with those same guys in your city? And the answer was no, you can't. Okay, now, was that a person? See, no, it wasn't a person. It was a system. It was the system of New York City. So you would look at in a microcosm that there wasn't a person. Now they have a mayor, and they have, but they have legislation, and they have judges, and so it wasn't somebody said, I'm in charge, and I'm going to make this happen. It could be that the mayor promoted it, but he had to develop the agreement of the entire operation, the entire city government, to put in the system. So it was not a person who would be called the Antichrist. It was a system, and so that system was a process of what you could and couldn't do. Ultimately, in the end, the beast becomes synonymous with the Antichrist, who basically, and we'll talk about this, becomes the guy, and he actually does. He does make the rules of the system, but now it's related to him, and he's in charge. So he'd be what's called a.
But it starts as a system and then narrows into the actual Antichrist.
To an Antichrist who then is a pure dictator, and there isn't anybody around to counteract what he does.
To challenge, right?
And similar to what I observed when I did that documentary on Hitler, is that. Germany had a process of how you elected certain things, even back then. But he wound up controlling things to the point where he became the dictator, and literally nothing happened without his saying so.
Right.
And he became the dictator of Germany. And he, in a sense, and this is why back then, by the way, Christians thought, well, that's got to be the Antichrist. Look at that, he's killing Jews, and he's coming after the world, and he's evil. That's got to be the Antichrist because it was a person. So that as we talk about it is, okay, we got to understand the cabal, who's putting this together, and we know some players already that are doing that.
Now, what do you mean, real quick, when you say got to understand the cabal? Can you, just the phrase cabal, can you explain
that? A cabal is a select group of people that work behind the scenes to manipulate things, to put things in place.
Right.
So it's not a universal. It's not like we Americans go vote. And let's decide if we want to have this kind of government, and we have the right to vote. It's a few people, and a few people could be hundreds of people, but it's a few people who are working behind the scenes to put things in place so that ultimately, if they have the power to, they can what's called pull the trigger and stimulate the tribulation. And so it's not kind of happening, because and the reason I say that is because Scripture tells us that. Right. It's called a harlot or a cabal, somebody that creates the beast, and that means somebody has to work ahead of time to create the beast. And we actually know some players. There's the Council for Foreign Relations, and I'm just going to make a simple statement. I'm not even commenting on what they do, what they don't do, how they do it. I'm just going to make a simple statement. Council for Foreign Relations. There is the World Economic Forum, Skull and Bones out of Yale. There's George Soros, who's a billionaire that funds a lot of this stuff. There's the Rothschilds that have worked to control and own all of the central banks around the world. Those are all players. Now they all say one thing, and it's public. You can go Google it, and you'll see the one thing they say: we are going after one world government.
Yeah, and it's not a hidden agenda.
No longer is it a hidden agenda. So the cabal doesn't even say it has to be secret. It just has to be the power to be able to pull things off, that they can move things. And the picture that I got this recently, as I was looking at the World Economic Forum now more closely.
Right. In the last meeting that they had.
Yeah, I was aware of them, but God said you got to pay way more attention to them. So I did. I've started to pay more attention. And what are they doing? What do they have? They have a couple things. They've stated that they are working and have close to a central bank cryptocurrency that they're going to use, and they've actually said it's going to become the one world currency. Public statement. They've made that public statement. They have openly, said that they're working to create one world government and what they call the Great Reset. And the Great Reset, which they've given definition to, is one world government. We're going to change the economics. We're going to have a digital currency. We're going to not have sovereignty anymore. It's going to be global. A variety, a series of things that they're promoting. And this is what interests me, is they made a comment, a written comment. Our goal for the reset is 2030. Well, that's only 8 years away.
Right.
And the picture that came to me, so I'm praying about this. Like, well, first of all, is it even possible? And how is that going to work? And God showed me a picture, and this is a picture that actually I personally saw when I was a kid and lived in Chicago. Downtown Chicago is a massive, actually, train system. And you can go down there, and you can just look over the wall and see how it functions. But they have all of these places underneath the city that store the cars. And then what they would do, and I remember watching this, is that they would bring a car out and put it on the track like an engine. They'd bring a car from another track and put it on the track behind it. Another car and put it on the track behind it. Another car, put it on the track behind it, until they finally got it together. When they got it together, they took off on the one track. And God says that's what's going to happen, is that the cabal is putting pieces together, that they're coming on different tracks. They're not ready to launch it yet because the train isn't ready yet. But watch the pieces. If it's 2030, I don't say it's going to be 2030, but what I do say is this: I can see now that it's not where it's likely, maybe not. See, because generally it's like, I don't think so. You know, it's
So you see a lot of things coming together so that it's plausible.
It's plausible. That's a good word. It's plausible. So with this being plausible, it's like, these pieces are coming together. Pay attention to the pieces.
Yeah.
It's publicly stated, one world government, and because of when we get into the tribulation, we talk about the beast, which we'll get into next time with Daniel 7, is it happens, and it's defined very, very well.
Right.
And all we can say is that more than ever today, even over 20 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, the possibility of it now is kind of known. It's like, I can see now how. We couldn't really see how.
Right.
Now we can see how. And by the way, guess what? There's agencies out there, the WF, others, that are publicly saying that's what we're trying to do.
This is what our goal is, right?
And nobody's going to really be able to stop it. Interesting enough, because of the difficulty of life, there aren't many people that say, well, I don't want to do that. Because it's like, well, it's not working that great anyway, so maybe we should, you know. So remember, and they're going to willingly adopt it. So we'll go next time into this in more depth with Daniel chapter 7, talk about the beast. But there's lots of implications for us spiritually about this beast, and what do we do, and how do we view it, and how do we respond to it. So it's really interesting stuff, and we encourage you, everybody, to pay attention. Don't be afraid. Don't act on your own. We keep saying, go to God, let him guide you and teach you. And our role, which we think is an important role, is to bring it out into the open so that people are not negligent about it. And the question is, what else do we need to learn about this? And so we're going to keep talking about it in a healthy way, we hope. And we're happy to have your questions and challenges and anything else you'd like to say to us.
Even as we talk about this, just that constant reminder that at the end of the day, our ability, our relationship and abiding with Jesus is the important thing, because that is our peace, our joy, our source of life, all of those things. But also, as we go into this, a reason to not go into fear.
That's right.
But knowing we have the gift of the Holy Spirit, and as we're abiding, he can lead and direct us even through the most turbulent of times that will be coming.
Yep.
So it's important to nurture that relationship and hear his voice.
That's right. And no matter what, he says, don't fear, don't be afraid.
Right.
Be anxious for nothing.
Yes.
I got this, so it'll be fun to...
Even this. Yes, this.
I think this is one of the most exciting times in history to be alive. So how cool is this going to be? Well, we'll see you tomorrow, Kathy, and we'll pick this up again next week.
All right. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
All right. See you soon.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. Send us your questions and comments, and tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace.